Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Steinberg, and welcome to In Focus. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The people will save their government if the government itself will allow them." Well, isn't that the conundrum we face right now? With an increasingly tyrannical government that's ruling over us through the security industrial complex, can American citizens save it? House Homeland Security Chair Mark Green announced that he will not be seeking a fourth term in Congress. He stated, "Our country and our Congress is broken beyond most means of repair. I've come to realize our fight is not here within Washington. Our fight is with Washington." Indeed. There's no greater example of its brokenness than the Uniparty pushing to continue to send billions of our dollars to defend Ukraine's sovereignty, while orchestrating an invasion at our own southern border. Need another example? Well, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has a Ukraine flag in his office, displayed equally with the American flag. To which Congressman Wesley Hunt asked, what are they, the 51st state? Actually, when they're displayed equally, I think the message is that we're one nation with Ukraine now, and on our way to a world with one government and no borders. Here to discuss is Alex Newman, CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media. Alex, thanks for being with us. It's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Allison.
Thanks, Alex. Well, I think Congressman Green is correct that the battle is between the people and Washington. He's going back to his community to join the fight. But what do you think, Alex? Is that giving up? I mean, don't we need elected officials to fight from within?
We do, but I think he makes a very important point, and I've actually been arguing this for a long time. Washington is so broken, it is so corrupt, it is so out of control that you almost can't do anything useful there. And I've learned this from many conversations with members of Congress that they try to suck you into the machine. And if you won't cooperate with the machine, well, then you're excluded, you're pushed out, you're not invited to the cocktail parties, you're not put in important committee positions. So it becomes very difficult. And I think, and Mark Green didn't specifically address this, but I think what we really need is for state governments to start re-exercising their sovereignty, to stop cooperating with unconstitutional federal programs. And frankly, with Washington this broken, I see that as a more viable option. We saw it work very well here in Florida during the COVID tyranny. The state of Florida really did interpose between the out-of-control Biden regime and the people of the state of Florida. If we had 30 Republican states all pushing back, all refusing to participate in this madness, I think that would be much more effective than trying to fight from within the congressional system.
Yeah, that's a great point, Alex. I do think you're right. It's just, I guess, a matter of whether or not states will actually stand up, because as we saw with the scamdemic, most proved to be rather weak, unfortunately. Alex, I'm curious to know, what do you think of the Ukrainian flag on display in our defense secretary's office? I mean, what does that signal?
It's a total outrage, and it's very, very characteristic of the kind of stuff we're talking about in Washington. There is a lot of money floating around there, and congressmen and politicians and cabinet members are willing to sell out to wherever they're getting the most money from. Washington, D.C. is absolutely crawling with foreign agents. A lot of them actually have to register, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. John Podesta, of course, didn't think he had to do that while he was doing important lobbying work involving Bulgaria and other places. But, normal people like Paul Manafort, who decided to help Trump win election, they'll get thrown in jail for violating that. So we have so much foreign influence in Washington, D.C. Very much like American companies and international businesses, they've realized that it's far more profitable, far more effective to just hire a bunch of lobbyists and go buy politicians in Washington, D.C. than it is to produce a useful product or be a useful country. So this thing with the defense secretary is an absolute outrage, and Congress ought to be holding hearings and holding somebody accountable.
I should think so. That would certainly be a great start. Don't know if it'll ever happen, though, unfortunately, Alex. I think also, in addition to what you just mentioned, the Ukraine flag is a signal, really, to remind us that Putin is evil, right, and such a threat to us and the world, really. Breaking news today, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died in a prison camp and under murky circumstances. I think this, of course, is today's Putin panic porn, but what are your thoughts on this, Alex?
Well, I think it's very clear that Putin is not a democratic-minded, liberty-minded leader, but we have so many problems in Washington, D.C. for the American people to be focused on a foreign leader when we have an actual enemy force on our own shores waging war. I mean, you talked about the orchestrated invasion. Putin's not orchestrating an invasion of the United States right now. Criminals in Washington, D.C. are doing that. So let's worry first about the criminals who are a direct threat to our continued existence as a nation, to our constitutional republic, to our individual freedoms, to the safety of our communities and our families. And then we can worry about monsters overseas. As George Washington said, we don't go abroad seeking monsters to destroy. We really do need to get back to the foreign policy that our founding fathers advocated: commerce, friendly relations with all nations, entangling alliances, and constant perpetual warfare with none. It's a very good policy. It served us well for a very long time. It has served other countries like Switzerland very well. There's no need for Americans to be in a panic about Putin right now when we have so many problems right here at home in Washington, D.C.
Amen. Well said. And on that note, while we're talking about, the ongoing propaganda too, George Soros has reportedly bought up hundreds of radio stations here in America, making him now the biggest stakeholder in America's second largest radio chain. I mean, this is really insane. I think it's not shocking, but it's alarming to say the least. I mean, just in time for this year's election, right?
Yeah, it's a very coincidental timing, it seems like. And, Soros has a knack for picking strategic sectors, right? We saw this with his pouring money into the prosecutor races across the country, where he got a bunch of woke prosecutors elected so that criminals could run around terrorizing citizens, and so that they could let their criminal buddies go. So this is a very strategic investment on the part of George Soros. I suspect he knows very well he's not going to make money on this. Liberal talk radio has been a total flop every time it's been tried. It always failed because Americans are not interested in listening to left-wing whining and propaganda over AM or FM radio. So very, very disingenuous here. Some of these stations are conservative. They air conservative shows. And so I think Americans ought to be very, very alarmed about this. And frankly, Soros, a lot of these local and state prosecutors ought to be investigating. There is a long list of criminal activities that there's strong evidence that he's been involved in. And, the idea that he should just run around and buy up our politicians, buy up our media with ill-gotten gains, some of it from insider trading, we know, because he was convicted of that. This is unconscionable, and it needs to be reined in.
It most certainly does. We will all be eagerly awaiting the day that happens. But as you mentioned, Alex, not all the propaganda selling, at least, not the liberal stuff. The commie news network CNN is now reportedly slashing the salaries of their big-name hosts like Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer. I guess, when you combine bad content with no talent hacks, viewers do tend to run. Do you think this is a good sign for media going forward, Alex?
It's a brilliant sign, and it's happening across the industry, Alison. What you'll notice, the Washington Compost just had to do another huge round of layoffs. All of these big liberal media outlets are hurting, and they're hurting badly because Americans are sick of it. Americans see through it, and you see that in the polls. Less than 1/4 of Americans trust the media today. And what you do see is more and more Americans turning on OAN, more and more Americans turning to legitimate media outlets that are not going to try to sell stale left-wing talking points and propaganda to the American people. So I think it's frankly very, very encouraging. I'm amazed that CNN has survived this long. I suspect if they keep it up, they won't last much longer.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I hope you're right, Alex. And, to go off what you just said, I don't think many people were surprised at the news. It's their current salaries that I think are raising more brows. I mean, Anderson Cooper is paid $20 million and Blitzer $15 million. In fact, I have a little clip here. Here's Wolf Blitzer trying not to vomit on air. But Alex, I'm not sure if his salary cut is from this clip here, or if this is just a metaphorical, take for the TV audience. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think? Is this the reason they're being cut?
Well, that's a good question, but they don't call them prostitutes for nothing. I mean, these people have a price, and we'll see if they're willing to continue spewing lies and destroying the country once they get their salaries cut.
Yeah, that's a great point, Alex. We shall wait and see. We're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you: the globalists are back together at the World Government Summit that happened this past week here. Any updates for us? Any news that came out of there that we should be aware of?
So lots of interesting things happening. Tucker Carlson revealed that the intelligence agencies had been trying to sabotage his interview, which was very interesting. They're totally out of control. Another one that really caught my attention was the head of the World Health Organization, the former communist terrorist, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, bragging about how all the governments of the world had agreed that climate change is a public health crisis and that we're going to use basically global tyranny to solve these allegedly related fake crises. Very, very dangerous, folks. And there's a reason you don't hear much about the World Government Summit in the American media. They don't want you to know about what's going on there, but it is wickedness writ large.
It is. It's right up there with the World Economic Forum Summit, COP28, all those. So yes, definitely important to stay tuned to what results from that. And I know, Alex, you'll be doing a great job at keeping us posted. We're all out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us, Alex. It's always a pleasure.
Honored. Thank you very much for having me.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.